So in that last section, we started talking about the prop system in React. I think you got it, right? Remember, it's all about passing data from a parent to a child. Now, what about, can a child pass data back up to the parent? Well, not through the prop system directly, but we can do it indirectly. Gonna show you some examples of that later on, but the system is generally about communicating information from a parent to a child. All right. Now, one thing that I perhaps forgot to mention in the last section is that props is short for properties. All right. But you probably figured that out on your own. So now let me tell you that when we use the prop system, there are going to be two steps. First, we're going to provide information from the parent to the child, and then the child is going to be able to use that information. So let's first focus on how we get information from the parent to the child. So we're going to find in the parent component where we show an instance of the comment. So remember, we're going to provide some information from an app component down to that single comment. So we're going to write out what that looks like, just about any other property or attribute that we've been providing to JSX. So we're going to say that the property name equals, and then the value for that property. And this information is going to show up inside the single comment. So now that syntax right there looks pretty similar to a lot of the syntax that we've already been making use of inside of JSX. For example, a class name equals comments. So the syntax here for providing a props to a child is very similar to what you've already gotten used to. And now the other thing that I want to mention about this property that we're looking at right here is the name that I chose. So I said name equals. Now there's nothing special about using this particular name. It's totally up to you. You can name it whatever you want. You could call it person or author or whatever. Now, of course, you can get creative here, but I would caution you that it's got to make some sort of sense within the context of the single comment. So now, in this case, the props that I've provided is a hard-coded string that says Sarah. And if we wanted to, we could easily place those curly braces and then reference the JavaScript variable inside here. So maybe we have some JavaScript variable inside of our component called name, and we can reference it inside of curly braces. Okay, so let's flip back over to our app component. And we're going to try to add on the first props of name. And I'm going to add in a props of name. And I'll set it to equal Alex. So I'm going to do the same thing on the next one. And so this one over here, let's do Jack. And I'll put in a name of Sarah for the third one. So what we're doing is providing the same property name to each of these details, but in each of them, each one has a different value. So what does this tell us? That when we provide a props to a component, it's always going to be a unique version of that component. And this props name equals Alex is not going to somehow be shared with this second component or the third component either. Now over here, this prop is unique. It's only being passed to this one. All right. So now that we've provided some information to a child, we have to open up that child's component in order to make use of this information. It is a two-step process. The first one I just had a little explaining to do. So first, we provided the information. Secondly, we use that information inside of a single comment. So now we need to get access to that prop that we have provided to this component. Okay, that props is going to show up inside of an object that is provided as the first argument to this function. So now let's pass it as the first argument and just console log that props argument and see what happens when we refresh our page. So I'm going to put that console log in there. And I'm going to save this file now, and I'll flip back over to my browser. Now I'm going to also open up my Chrome inspector so that I can see that console log. All right, so here's my console, and there's the 3 console logs. You see, each of these objects that you can see right here, bop, 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 they are the 3 instances of that single comment that we created. And if you'll notice, the props object has a key value pair inside of it. Now, the key is the name that we provided inside the app, and the value is the individual name that we provided to each of those single comments. Okay, so now to make use of the props in our single comment, we can find where we are currently making use of the name Sarah, which is in here. So I remove the Sarah, put in my curly braces to indicate that they are about to reference a JavaScript variable. And then inside of there, I will say props.name, like so. So now whenever this single comment is shown on the screen, the single comment is going to look at that props object. And it's going to see that there is a name property in there that's going to take that name and stick it into this tag. So now let's flip back over to our browser after saving this file. And now we'll see that our names have been updated for each of the comments to Alex, Jack, and Sarah, which perfectly match up to the different property values that we provided to those components. All right, so you've just learned the entire prop system. So now we can go ahead and remove that console log. Certainly don't need that anymore. And then next, we're going to go through that exact same series of steps to update our time right here, and the blog content, and the image. Okay, so now let's focus on doing our date right here. So in order to do that, I can go back over to my app component, and I'm just going to add in a new prop to each of these different single comments. And I'm going to name each of them date. I think that's reasonable. And let's provide a simple string that says something like today at 5 p.m. And I'll do the same thing for the next one. I'll say date equals today at 6 p.m. And for the third one, I'll do the same. Time equals today at 7 p.m. Just like that. So now, inside of our single comment component, the props object right here is going to contain 2 key value pairs. It's going to have both props name and props date. So I'm going to find the date inside that span and delete that, and I'll replace it with the set of curly braces then inside of here that will say props.date. So I'll save this and flip back over, and I'll see my newly updated times. All right. So now let's go and do the others. We'll first begin with the comment texts down here. Now, in order to do this, I'm just going to first flip back over to my app component, and I want to add a new property name to this thing. I'm going to say text, as a name for props. And for the first comment, I'm just going to give it content of it's amazing. Oh, amazing. All right, so on the second one, I'll do text equals great job. And the third one, thanks, like so. And we've provided the comments now, and they got progressively terse. But now we can flip back over to the single comment. Now, remember, this props object now contains a key of content that we can freely reference anywhere inside this component. So let's see. I'll go down to here, and I'll delete that hard-coded text. I'll put in my set of curly braces, and then I'll say props.text. Alrighty then, so let's quickly take care of our images. And then after that, we're going to check our single comments in our browser. So I'll open up App Component again and import our profile pictures from the image folder. Then we can do the same thing for the other picture. Copy and paste it and change the name like so. So now we can use those images as props. And I'll say picture equals and a set of curly braces, and then I can reference the image that we have imported inside of here. Now the same thing goes for the other components. I will say picture and profile 2, and again, picture profile 3. So it'll be a slightly different approach, but in practice, the syntax will be identical. We used a set of curly braces instead of quotes, because in this case, we're not referencing the string, we are referencing an image. So now I'm going to be able to save this file, and let's go back over to our single comment component. And we have a new property on that prop subject. So I will reference picture props as a source for this image tag. And then inside of this image tag, I'm just going to pass props.picture like so. Okay, so now I can save this file, and I'm going to flip back over to my browser. Ooh, everything looks pretty good. So that's props in a nutshell. And that's how to pass basic information from a parent down to a child. Why don't we take a quick break right now, and we can continue in the next video.